Hello and welcome to the Swine Disease Reporting System. This is the report number 41. My name is Edison Magalhães here at Iowa State University.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Trevisan here at Iowa State University.
And today we're going to cover the SDRS findings from the month of June. And with that, we have a pleasure to have as our special guest here today in this edition, the July edition, Dr. Montserrat Torremorell from the University of Minnesota. Thanks a lot, Montserrat, for joining us. Montserrat, she earned her DVM at the Universidade Autônoma de Barcelona in 1994 and her PhD at the University of Minnesota in 1999. Dr. Torremorell, she has an extensive background in swine health research and production systems, including health management strategies, disease eradication, diagnostic, and biosecurity programs. I have to get a paper here because it's a lot of things, Montse. Thanks for joining us.
No, you don't need to read all those things. So no, thank you for having me, Edison, Giovanni. I really look forward to spending the next 20 minutes with you. So thank you.
Thank you for coming to our SDRS podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for us. So let's get started, and we start with an overall question for our special guest, Montse. So what's the value that you see on these programs like the SDRS, and also you guys have at the University of Minnesota the MSHIM program, and most of the practitioners, they say that they like to use both of the reports, of the information. They are kind of integrate to each other. So what's the value that you see on that?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. So, and it's a very good one. The way how I look at these reports is that they provide a level of baseline information on the level of the disease we have, right, in the U.S. How well do we do as a country in terms of the disease that are affecting pigs? And the principle there is that unless you measure disease, you cannot improve it. So you don't know how to improve things or whether what you do, whether it's working or not working, unless you measure it. So I do believe these programs bring value in the sense that give us data and information to help us evaluate the strategies and see whether we make progress on our efforts to control and eliminate diseases. And the other thing, it also serves, these programs, they serve like a alarm system, if you will, to help us anticipate problems or trends on the diseases that otherwise we may not be seeing until it's too late. So very nice job with those two programs, and certainly a very useful tool for the North American industry.
Yeah, no, really good. And that can serve also as an example for other countries that they have the data, right? Mm-hmm. So let's get started. So here in the first page, we're going to start on the first page. We're going to cover the page that covers the PCR detection for PRRS. The next three sections, it's the PCR detection for PRRS, enteric coronavirus, and mycoplasma detection. And the last page that we're going to cover is disease diagnostic specifically. But here on the first page, which covered the PCR detection from the month of June in the United States, what were the highlights from this month, Giovanni?
Well, during June, we start to see some decrease in detection of PRRS virus, especially at the end of the month. But at the same time, we have this variant strain that emerged last year, that is the RFLP144 lineage 1C variant strain, that is being very active in some regions, more specifically Minnesota and Iowa. So with that, we have been seeing the lowest level on the CT values observed for the win-to-market age category. So seems like we have lots of activity there. And displays different roles for different regions. So regions that are not seen or are not affected by these strains are following the trend of lowering detection of PRRS virus and getting the lowest levels of detection for summer months. So one concern that the U.S. swine industry overall have is that there was a couple of sow farmers outbreaks during May that they are going to start to send pigs sooner for the nurse and finish sites. And during fall months, those pigs may start to play a role in terms of viremia and virus spread for this variant strain. So the advisory group remembers us to look for the biosecurity and biocontainment points that they shared last month on the last report, to apply those in the farms and try to contain the spread of these strains and other agents across farms.
Yeah, great. So, Montse, we have that information that Giovanni just mentioned regarding the low CT, especially in the winter market. So we have also the knowledge from the advisory board. They are already warning us on that. We had that issue when the first the strain started to occur at the end of 2020, and now we have that again occurring again some South farms in May. So what are your thoughts on that arena?
Yeah, so certainly the data indicates, and also when you talk to the veterinarians and producers of some of the regions, it's obvious that we are in an epidemic. So in the middle of an epidemic, we're in the middle of an outbreak. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this PRRS 144 lineage 1C. So we are not out of it yet, and that's what I believe we are seeing yet, even though maybe some of the PCR data starts indicating maybe a bit less of that activity. Mm-hmm. I think we are still in the middle of it. Also, usually in the summer, it's when we try to relax a little bit, right, on some of these diseases because of the seasonal component, but it certainly doesn't seem to be the case yet. I hear. So concerning because of the economic losses associated with these 144 viruses and the fact, as you mentioned, that some of these sow farms will continue producing positive pigs, that then we'll continue seeing some of the same trend during the summer and unfortunately in the fall, it seems like. So, but yeah, keep up the good biosecurity and see whether we can have less of a concern going into the fall.
You have lots of experience with working with PRRS virus, Dr. Torremorell, and here and there is these new strains that emerged. Like in 2014, there was this 174, now the 144. What is your advice general advice for the U.S. swine industry to overpass these turbulent times?
It's difficult and it's frustrating because it seems like we have these outbreaks on a regular basis, and always we think this is the worst compared to the prior one, mm-hmm. when all of them are very bad. And it's very frustrating because obviously producers and veterinarians are working very hard to keep this virus out. And unfortunately, we don't fully understand how the virus moves around. We know the main routes. However, when we are in the middle of an epidemic, we have to remember that just there is more of that virus. And in this case in particular, it seems like it's very regionally located in a very specific region, very big region in the Midwest. So we just have a lot of the virus moving around. So maybe some of the traditional biosecurity measures things we do for filtration or on transport, sanitation, so on, people movement, maybe we are still moving some of that virus around somehow just because of the massive amount of virus that it's present in the middle of an epidemic. So I think we just have to learn more about the intervention strategies that can help us knock down that amount of virus, that load of virus. And unfortunately, I don't think we have the answer yet, but we are working on it.
Yeah, great points.
And do you think that the people in the field, the veterinarians, the practitioners, they are more aware of this role that the winter market, the growing pigs have on going back to the sow farm, focusing on biocontaining the virus there first to avoid the sow farms?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think as an industry, the last few years, or since the PRRS control efforts started, we focus on the sow farms, right? Mm-hmm. And rightly so, because unless you have a pig that it's negative at weaning, why would you do anything in the grow finish, right? You have to start that with that pig, and that's why we started the efforts in the sow farms. But now we are at a point with in the industry that we have to shift our focus to the grow finish. That's where 90% of the pigs are in the grow finish, and then that's also where the viruses are. And unless we find a way to more effectively to contain those viruses, mm-hmm. That they don't spread regionally or that we don't move them around, I think we need to look at that very seriously on how we enhance the biosecurity measures, or how do we be biocontainment. And I'm just talking even simple things like how we move between sites when we go and visit those things, right? I'm not talking about fancy things to get started, but just basic, very basic biosecurity. In one survey that we did a couple of years ago, in a subset of sites, I think we had like 70% of the responses shared people moving between grow finish. So, so that there is always a chance that you bring something else with you, just because even if you just change coveralls, usually we don't tend to do such a good job in grow finish compared to the south farm. So the likelihood of you moving something around, it's there.
Yeah, no, great points. Have opportunity with small things, not fancy. So yeah.
Fancy will come after. First, we have to work on the small things, and then we'll look into the fancy things as the next. If the small things don't work, then we'll look into the fancy one.
Yeah, great. So let's move on to the next page here. It's the second page that covers the PCR detection for the enteric coronavirus. The same thing from PRRS, but here in this page we have three agents. We have PED, Delta coronavirus, and TGE. So Giovanni, what were the highlights from these pathogens in the previous months?
We have good highlights here. The detection of disease agents are going to lower levels as expected for this time of the year. Delta coronavirus that was pretty active during the beginning of the year now is going back to the expected trend of detection, and no TG again this month.
Yeah. So as Giovanni said, Dr. Torremorell, PD is going down, but the other side we have Delta coronavirus have been active during 2021, especially in the winter, and it seems that it was a regional issue. No evidence of mutation that we spoke with some other experts in this arena, but there is not too much investigation to understand these characteristics. So what are your thoughts on it?
You know, the coronaviruses are just fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we are seeing it now with COVID, right? The emergence of these strains, even though it doesn't seem like it was the case here for the Delta. But one of the things we are learning is that you can have, for whatever reason, very active outbreaks in a region. And I think that's what's happening here in this Delta coronavirus, and the way how we have some of the regions are confounded with consolidation or the production system, right? So the way how we move peaks and the way how sometimes we do some strategies, there is that risk that for whatever reason you just have spread within a pyramid, for instance. So I don't know exactly on this case, but we always have to be watching for this type of situations. But again, that's the beauty of these reports, right? That the veterinarians can look at that and they can use that data, that ongoing surveillance that they have in their systems, identify it as soon as possible. And then the nice thing about the Delta is we know how to handle it at the farm level. So having that information ahead of time or as it happens, it's certainly an asset for the veterinarians helping in these cases.
Yeah. So let's move to the next page now, which is the page that covers the PCR detection for mycoplasma pneumonia. So Giovanni, what were the highlights for the previous month?
Again, we have great news here. The detection of mycoplasma pneumonia is at lower levels for this year for our age category. So no other remarks here.
Great.
It's always good news, isn't it? When some of these disease trends come down, it's always good news.
Oh yeah,
and it's part of that seasonal component, I would think, right? That maybe there is less of that activity, less reports to, or less cases to the labs, but also an indication that the heat of the summer and the daylight of the hitting those viruses or bacteria, it's helping us keeping them under control.
I hope that's going to help us for control these new PRRS virus strain too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know, it's a challenge when you are still in the epidemic phase of an outbreak, right? We saw it with COVID before. We see it on influenza, that you can still have an very active infection in the summer because you just have a lot of animals that are susceptible in the population. So So summer doesn't always help us. Maybe it decreases the magnitude of the outbreak, but the outbreak still takes place. So
Yeah, a great point.
we will just have to hold tight until it's over.
So let's move now to the last page of the report. This page it covers the disease diagnosis detection. Here's from Iowa State VDL. So basically, the diagnosticians, they assign for each case that they receive, they would assign a DX code referring the pathogens and the lesions identified. And Giovanni put that together also like he did for the PCR detection data. So Giovanni, what were the highlights for this month on the disease diagnosis arena?
Well, on the disease diagnosis, even though we have a restricted number of cases, there was some signal for increased detection of coccidiosis and mole belly heart disease. And our advisory group has mentioned that there is some probably seasonal component in terms of this diagnosis of coccidiosis. We don't have in the market some medicines to use as preventive and treatment of this agent. And on the mole belly heart disease, it's more likely to be associated with some nutritional components and some movement of animals that was provided as a feedback from our advisory group.
And Montse, last month we had Dr. Yaski telling us that he had some concerns about some sites being burned with influenza A virus. And you are a specialist on that, so glad to have you here. So any revealing insights for this specific pathogen regarding the epidemiology of it?
Yeah, so influenza, as you know, it's a virus that also spreads very quickly, and we have some of these strains, right, that keep changing, and we have new strains coming into the farms. So when that happens, again, each farm goes through that epidemic curve. But, you know, some of the tools we have on influenza that are useful, and I think we're learning on how to use them better, it's vaccines, right? So vaccines help to, in some way, keep that outbreak more under control, even though it can still exist. But also we are learning that we have to combine vaccination with the application of certain management practices, in particular at the piglet level. So, and what we've learned recently is that you can just not have one or the other. You have to put them together to at least help control that influenza in the sow farms, and then with the goal to win a negative pig. So stay tuned. We're working on it. More information hopefully will come out soon on the work we are doing. But I would say that I think can be helpful for producers and veterinarians to deal with some of these rampant flu infections. So
you mentioned vaccine combined with management practice. In terms of vaccine, is a very hot topic for influenza. Any news that you can bring or give some highlight for us here in terms of new vaccines or any analysis in terms of return of investment for the usage of vaccines for influenza?
Yeah, you know, with flu vaccines, you know, we know they can work, you know, but it's a matter about the quantity and the quality of the immune response. And what I mean by that is that agreement between the vaccine and what you have circulating in the farm. So that's why surveillance programs and some of the reports like the ones you are producing are helpful, because that's point number one, that surveillance, knowing what you have in your farm and in the neighborhood. So we need that. So more than maybe having a breakthrough on vaccines, I will just say that some of the existing vaccines or even the old vaccines are just using them more strategically. Even when we don't have perfect vaccines, the flu vaccines can still be helpful. But what we are finding is that when that happens, you need to bring the management component to it, and then you have a higher chances of success. So stay tuned. We'll be talking more about that at the Lehman Conference. So.
Great points.
In
Thank
September. You. So we'll have more data then too. So we'll be happy to share with all the audience in September.
We'll keep looking for it.
Can you share the date? So just for those people that are watching, and the
Yeah,
website?
so the Lehman Conference this year will be, the pre-conference is 19th of September, so Saturday and Sunday, and the actual conference is 21st of September, Monday and Tuesday. And we'll be in St. Paul,
Okay.
St. Paul, Minnesota, same location as in the past, but we will also be streaming live the conference for all those colleagues that cannot attend. So it's going to be a hybrid event. But we look forward to welcome everybody in St. Paul. But then in case you cannot make it for whatever reason, just join us online because there will be a stream live.
One of the good things that we learned with COVID to do the hybrid versions.
Yeah, you always have to have a plan B for sure.
Yeah.
So Montse, the last question here regarding influenza. So it's common to see in the field influenza occurring simultaneously with other infections and co-infections, especially, for example, PRRS and influenza occurring. So what will be your advice for when you have that scenario?
Oh, I'm really, really concerned given what's happening with PRRS, right? I mean, PRRS and influenza together, they are just not a good combination. But I think in these cases, you just have to work with both protocols for both. I mean, certainly work at getting the farms stable for PRRS to the best of your ability. And for influenza, you still have to do the legwork of characterizing strains, understanding what's happening at the farm, and do the control program. So I would certainly discourage our audience of forgetting controlling the pathogens with what they need. So if anything, as hard as it can be when we go through health challenges, we still have to protect the animals for the other diseases, whether it's strep suis or others. We have to work comprehensively to try to keep the pigs healthy.
Oh, great comments. So basically, if we're going to summarize the whole discussion here, we're going to focus on that biosecurity and biocontainment arena for PRRS and vaccine and management, both for PRRS and influenza, right? They have to occur simultaneously and effectively.
And surveillance.
And surveillance, yep.
And surveillance, yes. Well, it's hard to implement good control programs if you don't know what you have in there. And that's where the programs, as what you say, the program at ISU and the program MSHIM or other programs help, the producers to know what they have. So, and they can monitor that. I think that's the beauty of these programs, the fact that then you can measure whether what the intervention that you are doing is helpful.
Yep.
Because you can say the data will tell you if you have to change or not.
And how do you envision, we are talking about that, how do you envision the future of disease diagnostic and surveillance?
Oh, I wish we had, I had a magic ball in front of me. But, one thing that's happening is that obviously diagnostics are becoming more readily available in many places. So that coupled with the information management and how you use that information can be very exciting, bringing all those components to the databases like production and so on, and merging that. So I think it's exciting because I think we'll just be, hopefully we can do a better job managing the diseases.
Oh, great. We usually ask that question for our guests. How do we envision? Thanks for your point on that. So that's it, Montse. Thanks a lot for participating today. Really good discussion. Appreciate. Dr. Lee Arens couldn't be here today, but he said hi and thanks for accepting this invitation.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to join you at a later date. And yeah, I wish Daniel would have been here, so hopefully we'll see him soon as well.
We'll be all together at the Lehman Conference, hopefully.
For sure.
Thank you, Montse.
Thanks for joining, guys. Have a good one, and see you guys next month.
Thank you.